I'm Lisa Bunnies, and this is Mind Yourself. Today is the first in a series of special interviews with someone who's lived a remarkable story of trusting that the universe will provide, that life can be lived without a safety net. Someone I've known for a long time, Elizabeth Ann Hill. Elizabeth and I met in 2005 at a humanities team conference at Bard College in upstate New York. Elizabeth, at the time, was in the process of writing a book called Twin Souls, A Message of Hope for the New Millennium. Twin Souls is an incredible story that begins with the death of her twin sister, Cathy, a Border Patrol agent who died in action on the border between California and Mexico. Although Elizabeth wasn't into psychic phenomena, she soon realized that her sister was connecting with her, sending messages that started Elizabeth on an incredible new path, which led her all the way around the world to 22 countries and counting, with no visible means of support. We'll talk about that and how she's been able to not just survive, but actually thrive. We'll also talk about a project that Elizabeth and I worked on with Glenna Dietrich, a woman who became a dear friend to us both. Glenna was a trance channel with whom Elizabeth recorded a series of interviews with a group of spirit guides, which they called An Interview with the Universe. I know you're going to find her story as fascinating as I do, so let's get started. So great to be here with you today, and yours is an absolutely amazing story, which began, sadly, with your twin sister's death in 2002 in Southern California, where you both lived at the time, and which took you on a journey literally around the world to 20 countries, and you're in England now, is that right?
Correct. I'm in Gerrard's Cross, which is right near London, not a little ways from London. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, this is an amazing story, and it could take 15 years to tell, but let's go ahead and start out with what actually began this whole journey.
Well, the crux of it began and of course, the story, but you can, help me along. But it began with the death of my identical twin sister, Catherine Mary Hill. She was a United States Border Patrol agent, and she was working on the U.S.-Mexico border in San Diego. And she was in an on-duty vehicle accident. And before she had died, she had been going through a very profound kind of spiritual awakening. She had been reading all these books, and she had learned about this grand spiritual awakening that was taking place across the planet, and this shift in consciousness. And she wanted to tell anyone that would listen about that. And so she was trying to tell me, but I really didn't know what she was talking about at the time. But after she died, I found books and notes and letters, books that she had been reading and notes and letters that she had been writing to someone. And I realized that that someone was me. And she was describing what she was learning. And it became pretty obvious later in the story. You'll figure out why she was a Border Patrol agent, because she had learned about the ideas of separation and, this is your country versus my country. And she was seeing she wanted to leave the Border Patrol, and she was making an effort to leave, but that was not to be. And it was very symbolic that was where she had passed away. So after, of course, this was unbelievably devastating, as anyone can imagine. But almost immediately, there were bells ringing in the back of my consciousness that, there's a lot more to this story. There's a lot more to this story. Pay attention. And I began having communication with her in dream states, and I began having communication with other beings of higher consciousness. I would wake up and there'd be blue lights near my bed, and there was this whole thing going on in my sleep. There was names, the name Jesus and Paramahansa Yogananda, as you know, was a big part of my journey. And just it became clear that there's a message. And
well, weren't even strangers coming up to you and saying, giving you messages from your sister?
Yes. I mean, I would be in a bookstore. I was in a spiritual bookstore, and this woman came up and said, "You know what? Your sister is right behind you." And she just started channeling and saying, "Oh, your sister's feisty, isn't she?" And, she was very feisty. We have the Hill feistiness. And so people were coming, and I was meeting all kinds of mediums and psychics started coming into my life at that time. And I didn't even believe in that really in the very beginning. But when people start telling you things that they couldn't possibly have known. And so that all started happening. And then I began realizing that, oh, I'm receiving communication with her and all these, and then other beings and other guides. And, so my intuition and my own abilities became much, much, much stronger. You know, I became very, very, receiving guidance, for lack of a better way to say it. And when I say guidance, I mean, we have this feeling sense, like you can feel something and you just know that or clairaudience, which you can hear. It's like hearing, but it's not really your ear, but it's almost like you can hear someone talking. And then of course you can see things in your clairvoyance in your third eye. And then there's knowing, like you just know something and you don't know how you know it. And I really had all of that going on. And so I began writing this book, Twin Souls, A Message of Hope for the New Millennium. It was all about what no longer, what is happening on the planet, what is working, what will not work. And it was just a really profound, and I could tell that she was like connecting me with the right book or the right person or the right teacher, alive or not alive, to help me to write the book. And so this went on for quite a while. It took me 5 years to write the book. And then everything in my life completely shifted. I was receiving guidance that I needed to leave my marriage. I was married, and everything just needed to change. And my husband was just in a different direction at that point than me. We just went like this. And it was all as it was meant to be. And then I was getting the guidance, quit your job, quit your job, quit your job. And so I thought,
well, mention the butterflies before you go any further, because that's
right.
a big part of this.
Well, yes, during one of the first psychic readings that I had, the woman said, when your sister's around you, you will see blue wings. That's really what she said, blue wings, like blue butterflies, like blue angels. And that's her way of letting you know that she's around you. And then of course, almost immediately, I'm seeing the blue wings everywhere. I was at the airport and saw a little girl with a huge sparkling blue butterfly on her shirt. And through the whole journey, especially during very challenging times, blue butterflies and sometimes blue angels would show up. And so, yeah, she was making it very, very clear that she was still with me. And it was very, very clear that, this is where I began to learn that the death is completely a myth. And it's just like walking from one room to another. And she had her part to play. And there was this message that kept coming about, this is a pact that you had made, and that she was going to go and you were going to stay. And together you were going to walk this journey. So that began happening, and I began receiving all this guidance to quit my job. And so I did quit my job finally. And I began doing a radio show, and you of course know all this because you were right in the midst of it. You helped me self-publish Twin Souls, which was phenomenal. And I was doing a radio show and interviewing people. And so, but the thing was that nothing was really happening in regards to like money. How am I going to, I didn't understand, like, what am I supposed to do? Because then I started, after a while, started getting a little bit nervous. I'd followed this guidance to quit my job, but then I thought I have to do something. So I started trying to find a job again, but I would sit and I would fill out applications online or whatever, and I would print them and they would be blank. And it was like the universe was just saying, nope, nope, nope. You're going in another direction. And it was a little bit scary, and I have a story later on about that, but I think I'll continue on with just kind of like the outline. So then I didn't really know what was going on, but at some point, through a series of synchronistic events, which is a statement that people will hear me say over and over because my whole life is about synchronicities. I met Glenna Dietrich, and you knew Glenna very well also. But she was a trance channel medium, and she didn't really like this comparison, but I always compared her to like Edgar Casey, because she would go into a trance state. She would be like asleep almost, and then these guides, we just call them the guides for lack of a better way, would come in and speak through her to me into the world. And then when she would come back, she would say, what happened? What did they say? So she was a very clear channel, because, some people know like Esther Hicks and people like that, and they are channels, but they are conscious. She was an unconscious channel. And so it turned out that we did this long reading together, this big long, where she used all her different tools, astrology and her own psychic abilities. And then at the end, she said, well, now we're going to do the channeling. And she went into this trance state, and then these guides came through and spoke to me. And it was just, I'd seen in her channeling before, but they suddenly said, do you want to ask questions? And I thought, oh my God, what? I was so flabbergasted by that. And so I asked a few, and then it was over. And I couldn't stop thinking about this. I have so many questions. Come on, this is, if I would have known, and I couldn't let it go. And so finally I asked her, can we do that part again? That's just that channeling part. And she said, well, I generally don't do that, because it takes a lot of energy. It took a lot of energy out of her to do that. And it was only like 10 minutes long, but she said that she felt very highly compelled to say yes. And so we were going to do that part again. And so I was sitting there. I lived in Southern California in San Diego at this time, and I was on the beach, writing out my questions. And I was so excited. And then right in the middle of this, I get this lightning bolt communication, interview with the universe. It was like a book title, an interview with the universe. And oh, yes. Because I had been doing my radio show, and I had always thought, well, wouldn't it be great to have a really big guest on my radio show? I always thought that. And then, well, what's bigger than the universe, right?
Not much is bigger than the universe, no.
So I told Glenna, and she was very excited, because she said that she had always wanted to use her gifts in a greater way, and this felt really right to her. And so we were going to come back together and have the second channeling. And so during the second channeling, the guides came through again, and I asked some more questions, and then they said, we highly recommend that you do what you thought. Well, let me back up. The interview with the universe. So we were going, what I thought of is that I would come up with all these questions, and Glenna would be in a trance state, and then I would ask the questions, and we would record it. And then there would be a book that would go with it. And so they said, we highly recommend that you do this. This is something that you planned before you came into your physical body, both of you. You wanted to make a profound difference. And so we highly recommend that you do this, and then we will be walking with you every step of the way. And so it was incredibly exciting, and so that was that. And then we decided that I would come to Minneapolis, where she was, and we would do, her son was a musician, and so his friend had an in-home recording studio. And so we decided, and I didn't have, at this point, I really was living on, I had very little money, and I didn't know how I was going to get to Minneapolis, but I was sitting there, and at this point I'd been learned about how I have to, become still and sit in silence and listen and pay attention. And then I got this sudden idea that I had credit card points, and I completely forgot about them. And I checked the balance, and it was like literally the exact amount to fly to Minneapolis, stay in a hotel, because they didn't have like an extra room there where the recording studio was, and then fly back. So the day came, and so I was to write out the questions, and she was just told her job was just to show up, and she didn't know what any of the questions were. So I spent, hours writing these questions. It was close to 250 questions on every subject that I could think of, and had this beautiful leather-bound notebook. And I got on the plane with my leather-bound notebook full of questions, and we came together, and it was a very amazing experience. It's hard to even put into words, but we did all this lead in with meditation and drumming and all this stuff, and to try to raise the energy of, to bring it. And you could feel the energy coming in. And remember when afterwards, there was all this static on certain parts of the recording, and they had said, Well, that was because we wanted you to know that we were physically there with you in the room. And
Right.
I remember they had a tornado the day before.
Right.
There was an F4 tornado that went through right through this town. And Glenna got the message, well, chaos is going to come close to this project, but it's not going to touch it, because there was one pane of glass left in the studio. Every other house lost windows, and the guides told us later that they had facilitated that because they needed to clear the energy enough in that area so that all these energies could come in for this interview. So it was really spectacular. And so Glenna did the lead in. We call in the highest vibration of the light and all the guides and beings who would like to come in and assist. And she said right before she went into the trance, she could just feel this huge sense of excitement. And so she was in a trance, and I asked the questions, and it was just a really amazing experience. It went on for 3 days, and we recorded this recording. So I would like to touch on some of the highlights of that interview. Did you want to interject anything? Or
Yeah, let's do that. But first, I want to let everybody listening know that not only the book Twin Souls is available for download online, but also the entire recording of Interview with the Universe is available if you go to Elizabeth's Facebook page, which
author page.
Yeah, it's facebook.com/twinsouls444. And that's where you can access this recordings. And I'll be repeating this. I'll put the link below.
The links, yeah. Yes, and so at a certain point, they had instructed me to make it available free of charge. And so everything that I'm doing is free of charge. And so people can download the Twin Souls book and read it. You can still buy copies of it. There's going to be a second edition, so it's kind of out of print at the moment, but it's still in print in a few places, and you can buy the book. You do have to buy it because it's being printed by somebody. It doesn't even have anything to do with me, really.
Right, and you don't even get any royalties off of whoever is printing the book.
No, so. I Googled it. I didn't think it was even in print, and I Googled it, and there's all these people selling it. And I was like, well, whatever. I don't. So it's just, I've learned to my hands are out of this thing. Okay, they're selling it, great. So if someone actually wants a physical copy of the book, they can get it. But the book, I have a sense that the book is going to have a second edition, some revamping is done, but it's there and it's available. And you can.
And the book actually ended up being exactly 444 pages.
Yes, I will never forget that, because 444 is, some people may know, is a symbol for angelics, presence, angels, and my sister also uses 444 a lot, or to show me that she's there. And so at the end, I remember because you were the one that helped me publish the book, and I remember you said to me, "Did you see the last page number?" And no, you can't plan the number. I don't think you can do that, could you? And it was literally 444 pages exactly. So it was very, very synchronistic. And it took me, this book is people who have read it, so this is like a doctoral thesis.
Right. So why don't you go ahead and give us just a few highlights of the interview? What did you hear?
Well, there was, of course, a lot to it, and I recommend that everyone listen to it. But some of the highlights, and the guides had said, this is going to be an experiential journey. They kept alluding to a journey. At that time, I didn't know what they were talking about. But looking back on it now, because that was in 2008, this is 2019, everything that I'm about to talk about, I know experientially to the nth degree. It was like every single thing that we talked about, I really walked through it all. I was led through all of it. So I'll hit the highlights and then we'll go from there.
Now, let me reiterate that at the time when you were doing the interview, you had no idea where this was going to end up taking you. Because, you were just trying to sort out your regular everyday life. What am I going to do with my life, et cetera?
I thought that it was going to be like, get a big publisher and publish my book and live in a $10 million home on the beach. Whatever. I was.
That's what we all want.
Who doesn't want that, right? So I really was not. All my life I had envisioned that I would be traveling and doing something different, but I didn't know anything. They kept alluding to it, but this is after I do the highlights, I'll talk about more how they described what I was going to be doing. But one of the things they talked about was challenges. You know, we come into this realm, like literally we come to the third dimension to take on challenges. People have misunderstood challenges. It's planned and intentional. Challenges are planned and intentional as part of a person's life. And they're there to set you free. They're there to help you to overcome limitations that you, in maybe another lifetime or even earlier in this lifetime, you were not able to overcome. And so challenges are not a mistake. And I recommend people do not run from them, because what's going to happen is they're going to follow you, you know? So you kind of have to know yourself. This is where that saying, know thyself. When there's a challenge, you have to say, is this a challenge that I need to make some changes in my life because this isn't right for me? Or is this a soul expanding experience? You can tell the difference. If you're really tuned in, you can tell the difference. And so we literally come to the third dimension to take on some of these darker, denser things. So the fact that it's happening shouldn't be a surprise. Now, that doesn't mean that we want them, you know, I mean, of course it's human to not want them, but challenges really are, I mean, Abraham Hicks calls it contrast. There has to be, we live in this realm of polarities of dark and light, and we have to have, you know, there has to be a catalyst for what do I want, what do I don't want, what works, what doesn't work. And so the challenges are there to overcome limitation and to set yourself free. So you know, instead of pushing them away, you want to go towards them.
Yeah, and you had plenty of experience. I mean, I know that we'll get into this later.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, because part one is about to end, I want to make sure that we sort of wrap up on challenges that you learned from experience, that you can't run from your challenges, because if you do, they just get bigger and bigger, and the 2x4 gets heavier and heavier.
Well, the funny thing was that during some of the channelings, not the ones that we had for the public, but we had many other channelings, the guide said to me, what you're saying as a soul and as a human being is, I want transformation to the nth degree. And when you say that, it puts you into chaos, because you're stepping outside of you're in the new energy while everybody else is still kind of in the old energy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, not everybody, but you're really stepping forward. You're taking this big leap, and you don't have to do that. No one's making you do it. You feel this. So yes, I mean, I immediately was just there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of challenge. But looking back on it now, if I had not had those challenges, and if it hadn't gone that way, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. Right. I wouldn't have the courage. I wouldn't. So it was very, very important. But at the time, over the last 11 years, this has been going on. I mean, there were times like, I can't go on.
Right. Yeah. Well, because challenges sometimes become really frightening, because things are changing, and I want things to stay the way they are. And so you resist and you resist and you resist. And I'm trying to put this in a way that won't seem frightening to people, that challenges, if you just accept them and roll with them and allow, then they move a lot more smoothly. It's when you fight them that things become scary and more difficult. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. Yes. And so instead of saying a prayer to make this go away, my prayer was always, help me get out of this what I want to get out of it. Because I'm the creator of my reality. I created this. I co-created it with my soul, my higher self. Help me to gain from it what I want to gain from it. And so I always, embraced it as best I could. But I mean, some of the things were just, really, and so I think some people have more intensity than others, so no one needs to compare. And if you are a person with very intense challenges, well, think of it this way, that you're a very strong soul, and you wanted to use the energy of this shift, because that's what they told me. You wanted to use the energy of this shift to clear everything that you could. And they told me I packed this life really, really dense with many, many, experiences. And from your soul perspective, it doesn't matter. Your soul doesn't make a judgment between bad and good, right or wrong. That's terrible. That's not terrible. There's no judgment. It's just experience.
And that's where we'll stop for today. Once again, you can download a copy of Twin Souls for free, and also the MP3 files of the interview by visiting Elizabeth on her Facebook page. The link is below. You can also listen to the interview recordings on YouTube here on the Mind Yourself channel. Again, the links are below. And if you're moved to support her journey or would like to offer an energy exchange for the download, you can PayPal Elizabeth at her email address, twinsouls444@gmail.com, or at the link below. And be sure to listen in to the rest of my interviews with Elizabeth Ann Hill to hear the rest of the story. Thanks for watching. I'm Lisa Bunnies. See you next time.